They voted in New Hampshire today in the first primary of this presidential election year. By all accounts, the Granite State was Mitt Romney's to lose, with the rest of the Republican field trying to hold down his margin of victory. At the very moment New Hampshire primary day finally arrived, the tiny hamlet of Dixville Notch cast its traditional first votes at midnight. The outcome, a tie between former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney and former Utah Governor Jon Huntsman at 2 votes apiece.
I'm very happy with the result. Very close election.
Hours later, as voters came out in earnest, the question was, how close would this one really be? The scene around Romney, who has led by wide margins in every pre-election poll, was chaotic this morning.
Hi, guys. Very exciting. How you doing, buddy?
With plenty of supporters on hand to greet him outside a Manchester school, one of the state's largest polling places. Huntsman, whose standing has steadily risen during the last week, hoped to duplicate the Dixville Notch results elsewhere in the state and perhaps surge into second place. He skipped Iowa to focus on New Hampshire.
I feel good because we've done everything humanly possible over the last many months. Now you let it sit with the voters of this state, who I know are all informed, and they're going to turn out and make a decision that they feel strongly about.
Good luck today.
Romney's other rivals also worked to chip away at his lead as they fought through the Election Day media crush, but none of them went as far as to predict an upset. Former Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich actually conceded a Romney victory last night.
I probably predict Mitt will be first, but he may be a very, very weak one.
Texas Congressman Ron Paul, who placed third in Iowa, worked to hold on to his solid second-place poll standing here to come in as New Hampshire runner-up.
Hi, nice to see you.
Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum finished in a virtual tie with Romney in Iowa and has spent more time in New Hampshire than any candidate other than Romney and Huntsman. He said today the focus should be on who is in the best position to defeat President Obama.
Vote for the candidate who has the best chance of matching up against Barack Obama, winning this election with broad, bold contrast. We need to make Barack Obama the issue in this campaign.
The president is also on the ballot today, but unchallenged by any major Democrat. When his supporters took their turn behind the polling booth curtains in Dixville Notch, he naturally won.
I'd like to show you my shirt.
I like that. I'm glad you're not 21 or actually 35 yet.
The next up on the campaign trail is South Carolina, where Texas Governor Rick Perry, who skipped New Hampshire, is already campaigning and attacking Romney. The Republican primary there is 11 days away. Well, Judy, you know, actually everybody is focusing on South Carolina, and some folks are leaving for that destination, including Newt Gingrich later tonight. But what's happening here in New Hampshire is shaping up to be an interesting race for second place, including someone like Jon Huntsman, who really doesn't have a chance to survive, or at least a path for survival, much after New Hampshire. You know, we did something interesting today, Judy. We called back the couple that we talked to for last night's piece, Tom and Melindy Byrne. You remember them?
Sure.
Don and Melindy Byrne. And we talked to them about they were undecided, they had changed their minds. And so we asked them, who did you really vote for? And they said, both of them, they voted for Jon Huntsman. So if those independents made up their mind, maybe he'll see some sort of surge tonight.
So, Gwen, you know, we talk about expectations, and the expectations have changed. This has been a tough couple of days for Mitt Romney. Who sets those expectations? I think people watching this crazy process often want to know who's the great setter of numbers, of who comes in first, second, and third, and by how much.
Well, you know, it was only a couple of months ago when we started. If you look at it on a graph, you see that Mitt Romney's been leading by multiple double digits for a long, long time. And in the last week, he's begun to lose some ground. So people begin to think if you don't win by 30 points, then you didn't win, especially if you run in Massachusetts, in New Hampshire before. You were the governor of Massachusetts. But on the other hand, the expectations for Jon Huntsman are also high because he spent so much time campaigning here and skipped New Hampshire. So that's where the expectations game. Sometimes the candidates set them themselves.
What about somebody like Ron Paul, Gwen, who made a big effort in Iowa, came in a decent third, a close third, right behind Romney and Santorum, and who's been really giving it his all this week?
Well, the problem is he hasn't exactly been giving it his all. He didn't come straight here from Iowa. He took a couple of days off. He's been showing up and campaigning, but not with the kind of vigor that we saw him campaigning with in Iowa. And his numbers have begun to reflect that as well. But as we've talked about a lot, Ron Paul voters aren't going anywhere. And he today came out and actually started defending Romney against the attacks on him by some of the other candidates. So that's a curious turn of events, and we're waiting to see what that means.
And what about Santorum, the man who did come in a very close second in Iowa? There's some discussion now about whether he should have competed in New Hampshire or gone straight on to South Carolina.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Rick Santorum really did get a second look his first few days here in New Hampshire. Voters came out to his events. They wanted to know who he was, but he didn't have an extra dime to spend on television ads. In fact, the only people who were on television here were Ron Paul, Jon Huntsman, and Mitt Romney. So if you didn't already know these guys, there was no way to know them. So he's going to find himself in a warmer bath of water in South Carolina, where there are more social conservatives, and that wasn't the case here in New Hampshire, Judy.
So, Gwen, you've covered a couple of these New Hampshire primaries, at least. How does it feel different this year, 2012? What's different?
This one is actually really a lot less vigorous than they have been in the past, in part because we only have one party in a real competitive situation. We didn't have that 4 years ago. You remember Barack Obama, we thought this time last 4 years ago that he was going to win the New Hampshire primary, and Hillary Clinton came out of nowhere, so there was a little drama. It's not as dramatic this time, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to find out why in just a moment.